Yes, and you're watching Primetime Asia on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories coming out of the region this hour. Japan warns citizens in China to be extra cautious as Taiwan tensions rise and anti-Japan sentiment grows. The embassy advises avoiding crowds, staying alert and respecting local customs as the US pulls a missile system from Japan amid the dispute. North Korea has accused Seoul of secretly advancing a long-cherished ambition to process nuclear weapons. The accusations come after South Korea's government announced that it finalized an agreement to build nuclear-powered submarines with the United States. India's Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal has signalled that US and India are making progress on the trade agreement. This comes amid the ongoing long-standing trade disputes between the countries over tariff barriers. A week after the deadly blast in India's capital, Delhi claimed 15 lives. A self-recorded and undated video of the accused bomber, Dr. Umar, has emerged. The video shows Umar talking about suicide bombing and martyrdom. Britain's MI5 security service has warned members of parliament about any attempts by Chinese agents to collect information and influence activity. The warning comes after prosecutors in October said they had to abandon the trial of two British men charged with spying on members of parliament for China. China issued a strong protest to Washington over a $330 million US sale of F-16 and C-130 spare parts to Taiwan, saying the move violates the One China principle. Defense spokesman Ji Zhonggang said Beijing is very dissatisfied, accusing the US of interfering in China's internal affairs. South Korea has agreed to work with the United Arab Emirates on the US-backed Stargate project to build a massive new artificial intelligence data campus in the Gulf country. The deal was announced during South Korean President Lee Jae-myung's visit to the UAE for a summit. Japanese Special Envoy Masaaki Kanai, returning from a visit to Beijing, has strongly rejected Chinese claims of deteriorating public order in Japan issued in its advisory to citizens, and has urged his Chinese counterpart to act appropriately. The objections were raised in a meeting between Kanai and his Chinese counterpart. This comes amid rapid escalation of diplomatic hostilities between China and Japan, following Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi's comments on Taiwan. Joining us now is Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at the Hudson Institute and he joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Dr. Nagao, for joining us here on NewsX World. Japan is warning citizens in China about safety. How serious is this threat amidst these rapidly escalating tensions between Tokyo and Beijing?
I think that there are two aspects of this decision. Indeed, this is the first response to Japan's response towards China's escalation in this crisis. And China have already warned the Chinese citizens to cancel Japan's visit or ask them to check their safety. So as a response, Japan side said Japanese government asked the Japanese citizens in China to check their safety. So that is the proper response. But at the same time, when we check the history, in some case, the Chinese attacked Japanese citizens in China. And politically, or intendedly or not, is not a matter. Anyway, the crisis mood has happened. Chinese citizen attacked Japanese citizen in China. And in last year, the one child has killed. And so because of this, there is a real possibility. Something instant has happened to harm the Japanese citizen in China. So, intended or not is not the matter. There is a real possibility that it could happen.
Yes, Dr. Nagao, do stay with us as we have further updates coming our viewers' way, but this time from the Korean Peninsula. Apologies, we have further updates from China. And meanwhile, everyday citizens have called it yet another diplomatic spat, saying that these are political issues and will sort themselves out in due course. Let's take a listen in to some citizens of China and how they feel about the issue.
去国外，比如说像我是今年1月份带孩子去的日本，然后我觉得从民众的文化交流层面其实是没有什么影响的。我觉得政治是政治，它当然是我们作为中国人，我们肯定是我们这个政治是我们政治正确是我们非常重要的一个我们爱国主义情怀是非常重要的一部分。那么我觉得在文化交流层面，其实这个是不分国界的。
我个人觉得，就是首先作品肯定脱离不了政治立场，所有的文化都脱离不了政治立场。但是呢，如果只是就是从一个人的角度来讲，你既然宣扬的都是一些美德方面的东西，那其实没有什么差别。所有的人都在向往和平、向往爱，对吧？就没有什么差别。你作为人民来讲，肯定是大家都是友好的。但是如果你掺使政治，那就是更上层的东西了。
Now, at the same time, tourists in Japan are hopeful that things can sort themselves out as well, and this situation won't last long. Citizens of Japan, however, say they don't mind if Chinese people don't want to visit their country. Let's take a listen in.
但係我哋相信排隊啊，或者係一啲禮貌，或者俾啲耐性日本人做嘢咯，去到好講嘅個規 procedure 啊，好講個規則嘅，咁啊，即係要尊重翻佢哋咯。
仕方ないって思います。残念とも思いますけど、どうなんですかね。私個人としては、別にいいんじゃないかなっていう気もします。別に中国の方が来たくない、危ないと思って来たくないのであればもう来なくていいんじゃないかなと思います。
Now we move next to the Korean Peninsula, and North Korea condemned South Korea's plan to build nuclear-powered submarines with US approval, warning it would trigger a nuclear domino effect. The North claimed the agreement exposed the confrontational will of the US and South Korea, accusing them of remaining hostile towards North Korea. The deal finalized by the two countries and joint military drills were seen as serious security threats to the North, escalating regional tensions. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung defended the submarines as vital for readiness against China and North Korea's nuclear ambitions. North Korea accused Seoul of secretly seeking nuclear weapons, fueling an arms race, while South Korea denied any hostile intent. Cooperating with the United States was framed as necessary for national security. North Korea remains resistant to dialogue with the US, which has offered to resume talks with Kim Jong-un. Dr. Nagao, North Korea accuses the United States and South Korea of choosing hostility. Does Pyongyang genuinely fear this submarine deal?
Yeah, indeed, this is funny because North Korea is really building the nuclear submarine based on the Russia's support. So that's why now South Korea try to build their own nuclear submarine. And because of this, North Korea accused South Korea's plan to procure the South Korea's nuclear submarine is happened. But when we check the logic, North Korea tried to build a nuclear submarine first. So that's why this statement came from North Korea. It's a little bit funny indeed. So that's why anyway, the arms race of the nuclear submarine has happened in the Korean Peninsula. and North Korea rely on Russia, and South Korea rely on the United States. So it looks like still the Cold War situation is existing in this place. But anyway, it is a reality. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Satoru Nagao, for joining us here on NewsX World. It's always a pleasure to have you on the programme. Now we move on, and a few weeks before Russian President Vladimir Putin's visit to India for the 23rd annual India-Russia summit, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar met Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Moscow. This was their 6th meeting this year, focusing on finalising plans for Putin's visit and key agreements, particularly on defence and mobility. Jaishankar highlighted the importance of their regular interactions, noting they have helped both countries stay aligned on regional and global issues. He also emphasised the significance of Putin's visit, expected in early December, where several bilateral agreements and joint projects will be finalised, strengthening the India-Russia strategic partnership. The two ministers also discussed global concerns, including the Ukraine conflict, the Middle East and Afghanistan. Jaishankar reaffirmed India's commitment to peace and stability amid ongoing conflicts. This meeting comes amid US pressure over India's Russian oil imports, but Jaishankar reiterated that India's energy decisions are based on protecting consumers. Jayjit Bhattacharya joins us now. He's an economist and finance expert, and he joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. What specific defence or mobility agreements do you expect India to finalise, and why now, especially, of course, given this tension which Donald Trump has created, particularly surrounding oil trade between the two countries?
Yeah, there's the specificities of what would be these defense and mobility related agreements. That's obviously not out in the public, but based on all the conversations that have happened, I think a lot of deals will be signed around aerospace because obviously Russia is a leader in aerospace, and India needs a lot of support in terms of aerospace hardware technology, specifically from a military perspective. And my guess is that possibly the stealth Su-57 aircraft, especially the redesigned one, which reduces the RCS of the Su-57, which is the stealth capability of the Su-57, that has got increased because of the reduction in the RCS, and that basically mitigates some of the key issue that the Indian government had against this military hardware. It will possibly be on the table because what the Russians are offering is a very good deal in terms of actual transfer of technology, 100% manufacturing in India. And as we have seen, modern warfare tends to drag on if one side is not mature enough, and therefore it's a war of attrition in terms of military hardware. So it's critical for India that we have the ability to manufacture locally. So all of that is from a military perspective. In terms of mobility, it's really not clear as to what kind of mobility solutions is Russia bringing to the table. Is it mobility related to the defense, or is it consumer mobility that we're talking about? I think once the talks are over, it's only then that we'll get more clarity in terms of what was meant by mobility, because till now there hasn't really been any conversation in the public related to mobility. Most of the conversations have been around defense, and the defense conversations have been both ways, of India providing support and military technology and hardware, and the other way around, where in advanced areas such as stealth aircraft, or for that matter even the non-delivery of some of the hardware orders that have already been put in. For example, S-400, which was critical in the last war that India had to fight with Pakistan, and it played a very critical role in defending India. And perhaps some of these issues will come up as part of the military conversation. The mobility conversation is a bit of a question mark as to what exactly will be discussed in that meeting.
Yes, indeed. Do stay with us, Jayjit, as we have further economic updates, this time coming out of India. And India's good exports to the United States increased in October for the first time in 5 months, jumping 14.5% from September, despite the continued imposition of heavy tariffs by US President Donald Trump. The recovery comes after a sharp decline in September when exports to India's largest foreign market fell significantly following a 50% duty imposed by the United States, which included a 25% penalty linked to India's purchase of Russian oil. Trade deal negotiations between the two countries are currently in progress, while Indian officials indicating that several key elements of the agreement are close to being finalized. India and the United States are advancing negotiations on a bilateral trade agreement, with 6 rounds of talks completed so far. Both countries have indicated they aim to finalize the first phase of the pact by the fall of 2025. The rise in exports to the United States comes in despite India's overall goods shipments dropping 11.8% year-on in October, while the bilateral trade declining in 15 of the country's 20 top markets. Okay, Jayjit Bhattacharya joins us once again. What does this say about the structure of the trade of trade here between the United States and India, even given, of course, that huge 50% levy that Donald Trump imposed on India a few months back now?
Right. And just to be clear, it's not really a reciprocal tariff as US is trying to make it out to be. It's a unilateral tariff because there was no tariff that was imposed from the Indian side. Within that unilateral tariff, what has been the impact in US is that the food prices have soared massively. So there has been a climb down from the US perspective on specific food items, which includes items like spices and so on and so forth. So therefore, we'll see the duty on some of these food items going down in terms of import from India into the US. Also the fact that the increase in exports that happened in October is on a back of a month-to-month reduction in exports that happened from India. So it was on a lower base that the increase in exports from India happened. So there is a long way to catch up in terms of normalization of trade. And unless we have the deal in place that is being talked about, it's very difficult for that normalization to happen and going back to what it used to be. So small pieces like the price of or the tariff on spices is not going to be the long-term healing point. Now, what is turning out to be is that India is being asked and requested to buy more energy from US, and as long as that's of an acceptable price, India has always been open to buying energy from anywhere where the price is acceptable. But in addition to that, India has also been requested to buy corn and buy some other agricultural producers as well as some of the dairy producers. All of these are crossing a bit of a red line for India. In fact, it's a significant red line. However, the nuance that has emerged is that India is going to purchase, for example, corn only for manufacturing of ethanol, but not for human consumption. This is critical because a large population in India is dependent on agriculture, and it's a red line that the Indian government cannot cross. So what's going to come out of this deal is going to be very, very interesting. I think a lot of tiptoeing around the red lines on both sides will have to be managed, and a significant increase in purchase from India of US products will happen subsequent to the deal.
Jayjit Bhattacharya, thank you very much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to get your insight on the economics of it all. Now we move on, and India has formally reacted to the Dhaka-based International Crimes Tribunal's verdict sentencing ousted Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and former Interior Minister Asaduzzarman Khan Kamal to death over their alleged role in July's student protest crackdown last year. In a statement, India said it has taken note of the ruling and emphasized that as a close neighbor, it remains committed to the best interests of the people of Bangladesh, highlighting peace, democracy, inclusion and stability. Meanwhile, Bangladesh has requested that New Delhi immediately return Hasina and Kamal. India says it will continue engaging constructively with all stakeholders as the situation evolves. We're now joined by Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, a former diplomat, joining us live from the Indian capital of Delhi. Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Could you tell us a little bit about the current state of India-Bangladesh relations and the likelihood that Hasina will face the verdict that she was given yesterday of a death sentence in Bangladesh?
Well, let me begin by saying that when Sheikh Hasina was in power, her government had maintained a strong and pro-India stance. And this is in contrast with the more Pakistan-aligned and often anti-India posture of the rival Bangladesh Nationalist Party. Now, Sheikh Hasina had fostered a conducive environment for resolving long-standing bilateral issues. Her administration had facilitated significant improvements in connectivity, including re-establishing road and rail links that had been severed since 1947. So by contrast, the present government in Bangladesh is hostile, and it is taking up a posture which is often unfriendly towards India. The latest in this entire narrative is, of course, the formal request by Bangladesh and its interim government to extradite Sheikh Hasina after she was sentenced to death for crimes against humanity by the special tribunal. Now, India has acknowledged the request, but has not yet commented on whether it will agree to the extradition. India has said that as a close neighbor, it remained committed to the best interests of the people of Bangladesh and would continue to engage constructively with all stakeholders towards that end. Now, of course, India faces a significant diplomatic challenge and is expected to handle the situation by prioritizing its strategic interests rather than immediately complying with the Bangladesh government's extradition request. Of course, the External Affairs Ministry of India has said that officials will examine the legal grounds, and in particular, Article 6 and Article 8 raise serious questions about the fairness of this trial and whether the extradition should be carried out. Moreover, let me mention that there are significant concerns amongst observers about the fairness of the trial process in Bangladesh. India will argue that the case falls under these exceptions, despite the charges of murder and genocide. India will, of course, try to delay the final decision until the political situation in Bangladesh stabilizes, buying time to navigate the complex diplomatic landscape. So all this poses a very serious challenge in the context of the present relationship between India and the interim government of Bangladesh.
Yes, Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, thank you very much for joining us. Unfortunately, we have run out of time at this hour. But that is all for today's episode of Primetime Asia here on NewsX World. Keep watching for more international